Hello, everybody, and welcome to And Action episode 66.
Wow.
Today, we've got a pretty spooky topic to discuss. I'm pretty fired up for it. It's that creepy time of year again, Mike. Are you ready for Halloween, brother? Are you ready for a little Robert Englund discussion?
Well, Robert Englund's a classic, Tommy. I just was up late last night and I found a really interesting pop culture tie-in to Robert Englund and Freddy Krueger that maybe we'll get into later. But the man is a legend. Freddy Krueger, the V web series, for those that remember the original V, I believe Robert Englund was a big part of that. And you've worked with him in Incubus, and just a really talented guy. I mean, and I think what's interesting about Robert, I know we'll get into this, is that he's such a classically trained actor that him in the horror genre is kind of an interesting path. But I think he brings so much to that character and to all the characters he's done. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, just for some of the non-horror movie buffs out there, I think it's important to spend a little time just talking about the movie Nightmare on Elm Street and the entire franchise, and just really what that Freddy Krueger character means to pop culture, not just horror. I think Freddy Krueger goes far beyond the realm of just horror movies. He's actually ingrained into pop culture in the sense that the coolest thing about Freddy Krueger, and this is all because of Robert Englund's talents bringing that character to life, I feel like you could have never seen a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, not one, and people still know who Freddy Krueger is. You don't even have to have seen the movie, and so much so that it's actually used just as a reference. For example, if you were to see a scary person in the parking lot of a supermarket, you might look at him and say, so you might look at him and then look to your buddy and say, "My God, like Freddy Krueger's about to pop out at us over there." It's just become synonymous with a scary individual, the term Freddy Krueger. So, really just amazing stuff, Mike. Video games, action figures, T-shirts, you name it. Freddy Krueger has really kind of cemented his place as a character, as an icon, as really something that far beyond Robert Englund's days. Thank God he's still healthy and he's still with us. But I feel like this is a character that'll probably live on for a century beyond his living days.
I think Robert as Freddy Krueger will. I think kind of like the Brady Bunch will always be the original cast, and you see those memes. This will always be this. They the filmmakers, whoever they were, tried a reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street with a different gentleman, actually a really talented actor playing Freddy Krueger maybe 10 years ago, and it flopped horribly. It was not well received. And I think, to be honest, Tommy, I think that I never went out and saw that reboot because I wasn't interested. If it wasn't Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, I really didn't want to see the reboot. I didn't even have the morbid interest to see it. So I think probably a lot of fans are like that. Like they associate this particular gentleman with this particular character, and any type of recasting is not acceptable. And I don't think that reboot ever got a sequel, Tommy. So that tells you that.
Yeah, it's definitely, something worth spending a minute on. There was a reboot with a different Freddy. It didn't really get over. Fans, I think, felt almost a little betrayed on behalf of Robert. Almost like, well, Robert's still alive and kicking. Why
Right.
are you recasting, the guy that we kind of grew up with? And it's kind of unique, even, the design. If you look at the makeup design of Freddy Krueger, his face is kind of modeled, although of course it's, there's a lot of effects and prosthetics built into making that kind of burnt face effect. The profile is very much Robert Englund's real profile. Robert has a very iconic nose. It's very kind of recognizable, very kind of straight, pointed. Uh, and again, I think just changing that face kind of pissed the fans off a little bit. It was almost like, again, we're not talking about. It's not like Freddy Krueger is a body guy, as we say in the wrestling business. It's not like he's one of these characters that required great physical strength, and you could say, "Oh, well, he was getting a little older, so he just couldn't do it anymore." It's like Freddy's very much a psychological character. He haunts your nightmares. So it's one of those things where I definitely think Freddy could have done it. I'm sorry, I think Robert could have played Freddy in that reboot, and I think that that's a big reason why it was a little bit of a miss. But yeah, man, I think, let's face it, you will see a day 20 years from now, 30 years from now, even when, uh, again, not to sound morbid, but when Robert's long gone, that character is going to live on. You'll see that character get dusted off and probably reimagined, and that's all because of the efforts that Robert put in. And there's no question you can't replace him, but I'm just talking about the character itself. I don't know that there's another horror movie monster, if you will, that comes even close to Freddy. I mean, yeah, there's Jason, yeah, there's Pinhead, yeah, there's the clown
Michael
from It,
Myers, Pin,
Michael Myers,
Pin.
Pinhead, yeah. There's a lot of them, man. The Leprechaun. None of them even really come close to holding a candle to the level of pop culture impact that good old Freddy has. Maybe you could argue Jason, maybe, but really, again, it's synonymous. Really, like with horror, you can kind of the cool thing is you can just say Freddy. You don't even need to say Freddy Krueger, and people kind of know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that type of thing is Pennywise is who I was trying to say from It, and you
Hmm.
got Chucky from Child's Play. I think the reason, if I could, just kind of jump in there with this because I like this conversation, is that the Freddy Krueger character, especially with the sequels, I think starting with 3, 4, and 5 of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and I think one that's really underestimated is Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which came out before the Scream series, but I think it actually covered everything the Scream series was did. I think happened in Wes Craven's New Nightmare as far as the meta and the breaking the fourth wall, and Robert Englund playing himself, and the actress who played the girl in the first one playing herself, and so forth. I think the reason why Tommy, why Freddy stands out from the pack of these iconic, horror modern day legends is that he's allowed to have a sense of humor, and his chops, literally like his acting chops, not just his chopping up of kids. uh, Robert was able to play with this, and a really weird thing happened, Tommy, is that the origin story of this character is very dark. I mean, it's basically a child murderer, and who the kids on Elm Street, I think in the 1950s, they rebel against the child murdering creepo, and they burn him alive and they kill him, right? But then he keeps coming back to the kids in the 1980s as this kind of in your dreams, like he's coming back to get the new generation, the kids of the kids that killed him. So the origin story is so pitch black, dark, nasty, right? But somehow people, basically of my generation, accepted this guy as a cult hero, and he became the hero of the franchise. So pretty soon, people are going to the movie theaters to see, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, 5, Dream Warriors, all these other ones, and we're cheering on the child killer. And so I mean, that's just it's a weird thing. I mean, Tommy, I can go back and I mean, there's clips on YouTube of news reports from the 1984, 85 era where they're like showing that kids are bringing the Freddy Krueger glove into elementary school for show and tell. And the teachers are getting upset because they think it's a deadly weapon. Like the teachers are like, "What's this glove with these, spikes on it?" The parents are getting upset. Um, but
Yeah.
somehow he becomes the worst of the worst bad
Well,
guys,
I think
becomes
that,
the best of the best.
I think that we see that in every genre. If you really think about it, Mike, as you disappear into the crowd behind you, your
Yes.
green screen gimmick. I think we see that in every genre. If you think about it, if you like if you like horror movies, it might be Freddy. But if you like action movies, there are plenty of iconic villains. Like one of my favorite characters in Die Hard is actually Hans. The main villain. A lot of times. Like for example, in pro wrestling, Stone Cold Steve Austin, well, he's kind of acting like a bad guy, yet everybody loves him. It's the anti-hero effect that I think we kind of appreciate. And I think that, again, there was something visuals have a big part of it too, and like what we identify as cool. And I think something about, let's just take a minute to think about the Freddy Krueger look, okay? He's got the mangled up hamburger meat face, yet there's still something kind of cute about him in the sense that he can emote, even with all these burns on his face, he still can emote, he can smile, he can make horrible faces if need be. So you can get a lot of mileage out of that face. Then you've got the hat, which is why I rock this hat. Sometimes
Nice.
you'll see Freddy in a hat. Then you've got the iconic green and red striped sweater, which
Yes.
is just badass. I mean, look at that sweater. It's kind of like heavy duty. It's kind of fringy on the bottom. And then he's got
Yeah.
these black pants and the boots. And of course, Mike, you mentioned it. He's got this weird claw kind of thing going on here. What's this
Yeah.
claw that he has? He can do a lot of damage with that. So he checks all the boxes. He's got an iconic costume. He's got a badass weapon that he wields that's unique. Got the face that'll kind of both make you terrified and make you laugh sometimes. Freddy really just has it all going on. So that's from the mind of Wes Craven. And I think, Mike, we want to spend this conversation on Robert Englund, but I don't want to spend too much time on Wes Craven. But I think the entire Freddy character came from like when Wes Craven was a little boy. There was just like I use the word creepy guy in the neighborhood loosely because I'm sure this guy was a totally law-abiding citizen. I don't think he actually did anything wrong, but there
Sure.
was like a creepy guy in Wes's neighborhood that all the little kids were like, kind of pointed at like he was their boogeyman. And if memory serves me, I think the guy actually, the poor bastard had burns. Like I think his face
Oh,
was a little burned. So like that was one of those things, like, just children being ignorant, not really knowing, that this poor bastard has been through the ringer, immediately being afraid of that kind of burn look. So it's a pretty cool character. And like you said, out of all those movies, I really like the Dream Warriors, Mike. I thought that was a fun one. I thought that, from an effects standpoint, they had some really cool effects. And of course, the music group Dokken with Dream Warriors, the title track was pretty cool. Um,
Tommy, I think a gentleman that I used to study with at a film school was the cinematographer for Dream Warriors, Steve Fierberg, not Feinberg, our friend at the Rhode Island Film Office, but Steve Fierberg, who also
oh,
worked on the movie Secretary, and I know that he did at least one of those Freddy's. It was probably three or four, and but also another tie-in to the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I believe was it Johnny Depp that his first ever on-screen appearance is in Nightmare on Elm Street 1, and he's his first like major scene in a movie is getting killed by Freddy Krueger in a bedroom scene.
that's right. Johnny Depp was kind of put on the map in that very first movie, and you know what? Again, we want to spend this time on Robert, but like if you go back and watch that movie, uh, there's a reason why Johnny Depp is a movie star. I mean, that's his first movie. He's terrific in it. He really kind of steals the show in that movie. As far as if you look at the teens in the movie, you could kind of just tell, like, ooh, this guy's going to be a star. Has that it factor in the movie. Pretty cool to see that. Let's take a second just to say what's up to our end action faithful here. Our boy Laz is checking in. What's up, Laza? Greetings to you from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Good to see you, brother. I also like Robert in the D. Snyder from Twisted Sister fame film Strangeland. That's kind of an obscure one. Sounds like a little bit of a cult classic. I've never seen that one. But I do remember hearing that D. Snyder. I knew there was a D. Snyder Robert Englund connection.
Right.
Kim, what's up, Kim? Good to see you with us this week. So Mike, let's turn the page a little bit. This all happened in Robert's kind of the high water mark of Robert's fame was probably, I would say, somewhere right in the mid to late 80s, and kind of riding through to the early 90s. That's when it kind of was, you saw Freddy everywhere. That's when the movies were coming out actually in theaters. Um, but then turn the page, a couple decades later, uh, there I am on set working on my very first movie that I'm an actor with a speaking line. It's a movie called Incubus, directed by Glenn Ciano, and I got a chance to work opposite Robert Englund, man. And I remember hearing from producer Chad Verdi that, "Oh, yeah, we just made an offer to Robert Englund, and it looks like he's gonna do it." You know, I was actually on the project even a little bit before Robert because they were just casting day players and things like that, and Robert's offer was out, and I remember hearing that he was gonna do it, and just thinking in my mind, like, "Wow, that changes the entire landscape of this movie," just thinking, like, you got a horror icon playing the lead character in your horror movie. It's gonna be hard to mess that one up, you know?
Yeah, buddy. And fast forward maybe a year and a half later, that movie played at Rock and Shock. And I'm trying to think of what year. Maybe was that 2009, 2010, something like that.
Yeah. Well,
And
let's not fast forward too quick, buddy. We're gonna talk about the movie.
sure, no, I just want to say that I went to the premiere of that in the audience, and I saw Robert there to support the film, and just random fans. Hey, Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund, and Robert was so generous with this random guy, just taking a picture with him. And I believe Robert was wearing like a scarf and a trench coat, and really
Yeah,
looked like a dig.
let's save our Rock and Shock stories because I got a few of them. Because you're right, Mike. He's so good with his fans, and that's a reason why he's kind of like Elvis in the horror movie convention scene.
Yeah,
But we'll definitely we'll button up the show with that because we did get to spend some time after the fact with Robert. But back to Incubus, I remember him getting cast, and I remember him showing up to set the very first day. And again, here I am, this like 22-year-old actor, just very excited to be on a movie set. And I remember just kind of watching everything he did, because he was the number one on the call sheet. He was the guy that's working every single day. And usually like that, you could probably compare that to like the captain of the team. And like those kind of actors set the tone for like the rest of the cast and how everything's going to kind of go. Because if that number one on the call sheet is in a good mood, and if they're bringing it every day, and if they're courteous to the crew, and if they have a good attitude, you're going to see a lot of trickle down. It's hard for the other actors, the other name actors to kind of uh, put up a stink about things if that number one actor is in a good place. So Robert was, I recognized right away as I'm kind of studying him as this young actor. I'm recognizing all the things that he does, and I love everything about it. I'm recognizing the attention to detail that he puts into every little nuance. For example, I remember I got lucky in the sense that when you do your costume fittings for a movie and you get cast, a lot of times, especially on a slightly bigger movie, you're gonna get to go in an entire day that you're not even shooting just to do what's called a good old-fashioned wardrobe fitting, Mike.
yes.
So I got lucky and my wardrobe fitting was the same day as Robert, so I got a chance to kinda see him interact with the costumers and talk about specific colors that he wanted represented in his costume, and how he wanted the collar on his jacket to be, and how he wanted his pants to be tailored, and how he wanted the coat to be tapered in at a certain point and then fan out. And um it was just really really cool to see that attention to detail, because let's face it, Mike, a lot of guys would just show up, be like, all right, what am I wearing, where's my check, awesome, I'm out of here.
I think that's comes from a sense of personal pride in a good way with Robert. I'm sure that just seeing him at that convention, you can see that he's one of these gentlemen, kind of like a Tony Todd that we talked about a few weeks ago, that takes pride in his personal appearance. And it's like he's a movie star. Tony's a movie star, Robert's a movie star, and when they show up, they're going to look really good. So why wouldn't Robert transcend that into his film appearance? And if he's going to do this movie, he's going to look good in the movie. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to look substandard or average. He wants to look great. And I give him credit for having that attention to detail.
Yeah, and it's cool because I think it's and again, I'm not saying that you're not on the money with that, but I think it's beyond just wanting to look good. I think it's not, when you say that, it almost sounds like a vanity thing, and it's like I think it's more like he's so invested in telling the story, and I talk about this all the time. Like it's our job as filmmakers, as actors, it's to just constantly be telling story. And a lot of times you can tell story with the clothing that you wear. A character's costume can certainly it's a great kind of not so in your face way to tell story. And it was cool to see that Robert was connected to the character and connected to the story and talking about, well, I want him to have clothing from this era because it's almost like he's a spirit that was trapped in this, this decade or whatever. Guy's just leaking story, Mike.
Well, he studied the script, and I think that's really refreshing because, buddy, I've been in situations, I'm sure you have too, where it's obvious that an actor, whether they're famous, not famous, up and coming, whatever, I'm sure you've worked with people and you're like, man, I don't think they've even read the whole script. Like
Oh yeah.
they did the actor trick, which is you get your script and it's bullshit, 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 my line, bullshit, bullshit, my line. That old joke, buddy. And I think when you have a guy like Robert Englund, who's by the time you worked with him, he had already had so much success, not only with Nightmare on Elm Street series, but V and everything else he's done. Episodes of the Jamie Foxx show, The Simpsons. He was on in the Treehouse of Horror 9, Married with Children, Sliders, Babylon 5. I mean, so much stuff that this guy has done. Not just stuff, but great stuff. And for him to constantly hold uh, himself to a high standard, it's refreshing, quite frankly, because he's not just cashing it in. He's doing the work, and he continues to do the work. So I applaud him fully for that.
Yeah, he really does. And Mike, you said it earlier about on the convention scene. Robert is a very sharing individual. And I mean that in a good way, in the sense that he's a storyteller. He loves to interact with people. So many a days during the filming of Incubus, I remember the lunchroom being set up with all of the tables. And this is no bullshit. I'm not kidding. But you would see Robert literally holding court, like sitting on the top of a lunch table, like sitting on the table part with like, I'm not kidding, a dozen, maybe sometimes 15, 20 people towards the end of lunch, finishing up their lunch, throwing out their trash, whatever. Just like this, just like watching Robert tell stories. Like, and he has them, it was almost like story time in elementary school. And
Sure.
Robert's just sitting there and he's got this really dramatic voice. And it's one of those guys where it's like, it's easy to listen to him speak, just the way he talks and tells a story. It's really kind of nicely done. And he's just sitting there saying, there I was. We were filming Nightmare 2, and Wes comes by and just like telling us all these great iconic stories. And I'm not going to, tell any of them, retell any of them. It won't do it any justice. But it's like Mike said, in the 80s, you may not think of it that way today, but in the 1980s, we're talking like Freddie was A-list. Robert Englund was like an A-list movie star at the time because those movies were doing box office. They were making tons of money. It was a license to print dough. And and again, timing is everything. We say that all the time. It's so fucking true. If we could ever harness timing, all your worries would be whisked away. And I think Freddy, the character itself, the Nightmare on Elm Street movie franchise, and Robert as an actor, boy, did they strike gold with timing in the sense that right in the mid 80s, there was this horror movie explosion where horror movies and the old school VHS tape trades, and you had rental stores popping up, and renting VHS cassettes became a big thing. So, like, horror movies really exploded in the mid 80s. And I feel like to be right in the middle of that and to be the kind of top guy, if you will, of that horror movie genre, it really just cashed in. And the nice thing is, Robert, as a human, doesn't mind talking about it, doesn't mind sharing all these stories. He's got so many great stories with other famous celebrities and just parties that he went to in the 80s. And he was right in the thick of it, man. So it's really fun to just chat with Robert, aside from watching him do his thing on set, which I'll get into that in a minute. It was really just fun to be around him. It was almost like Mike. This is going back to like 2012. So podcasts were a thing, but they weren't really a thing in
Yeah, yeah.
2012. Not nearly like they are today. Anytime you're around Robert Englund, it's like you're at a live podcast event. Like that's how great of a storyteller he is.
That's a great testimony. I just looked up on his old Wikipedia page. His birthday is June 6th. He was born in Glendale, California, the son of Janice and John Kent Englund. Apparently, his father was an aeronautics engineer who helped develop the Lockheed U-2 airplane. He's part Swedish and part Scottish, which I think might give him some of that, flair. You know what I mean? Like some of that European classiness, I would put it.
It's a
Um,
storyteller.
Storyteller, and Tommy, there's a pop culture tie-in, man. You got to give me a minute on this one because this wraps around, but this shows you how big Freddie and Robert Englund is to the world of pop culture. If you're ready for it, I'll give it
All
to you.
right, hit us with it.
Okay, so the Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff had their one of their first big albums, CDs. He's the DJ, I'm the rapper, and the very first track was a song called "A Nightmare."
Nightmare on My Street.
Right, A Nightmare on My Street, which they apparently looked into doing a tie-in with New Line Cinema and Nightmare on Elm Street. Like they wanted to do it officially, but for whatever reason, the film producers or the studio did not get back to them in time. They were already doing another song, apparently, with another rap band. I want to say like the Fat Boys, something like that. And so Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff just went ahead and did the song anyway without permission. And they put it on their album. And then the next thing you know, they're getting some lawyers things like, hey, you're kind of liberally using the IP of our stuff, Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, and you didn't, sign a contract with us. We have no deal. And now you're getting sued, right? So basically, the offer was we're either you guys have to agree, meaning Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff, you have to agree to do 2 movies with our studio or to pay this very large fee. And somewhat surprisingly, Tommy, DJ Jazzy Jeff and Will Smith did not take the opportunity to do the 2 movies. They decided to pay the very large fee. Now, the 2 movies turned out to be House Party 1 and House Party 2 with Kid and Play. So, House Party 1 and 2 in this other universe, it could have been Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff doing the House Party movies before Will Smith ever did the Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Wow, that's pretty mind blowing, buddy.
Well,
That's
there's
cool.
even It is cool. There's even more to it. Will Smith, he and DJ Jazzy Jeff are now basically indebted to pay off this large fine, right? So they're kind of like, although they're rich and famous, now they've got a very big bill to pay off. Will Smith goes on the Arsenio Hall show, and he happens to be a guest on the show when at the studio that day as like a VIP or something like that was a gentleman who was looking to produce his life story sitcom, The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, was looking for a gentleman to more or less play him. And that producer saw Will Smith's charisma, and I think Will Smith, even on the Arsenio show, said something like, "Yeah, I gotta pay off some debts," like in a good humored way. So the gentleman said, "Hey, why don't you audition for this sitcom that I'm pitching about my life story?" And we know what happened. He
Wow, and the
did
rest
he
is history, buddy.
The rest
That's
is
amazing.
history. Now, if that lawsuit, if that settlement of Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff have to pay off this huge bill did not occur, then we wouldn't have had Will Smith would have had a career trajectory, but it would have been a bit different. We don't know, because then
Yeah,
you
you
get
just
into the
never know. You just
right.
never know. Yeah, there's all kind of different factors that the space-time continuum definitely would have been altered a little differently that day. So pretty crazy story, and that goes to show you sometimes in life it is easier, or I should say, it is more beneficial for you to beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission, you know? Like, look, they just went ahead and said, "Fuck it, we're gonna make the song anyway." And,
Well,
yeah, they caught a rash of shit, but it all worked out. The karma was on their side.
sort of. I mean, if you're Chris Rock's face at the Oscars, you might disagree, but just so many
Well,
pop
that's a
culture
whole
things,
different
Tommy.
story for another story for another day. It's a good thing that Will wasn't wearing Freddy's claw hand when he slapped him
Ouch. I
with
mean,
the
just think
face.
about the Ali movie and all the big things, but I mean, it all goes back to Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. If Robert Englund did not nail that part, I mean, and not just
Yeah, there
nail
would
it,
have been
but
no reason there would have been no
yeah,
reason to even make a song about Nightmare on My Street. Yeah, no,
right.
that's pretty cool, man. I want to wrap things up in a little bit, but I want to get things flowing and tell a couple more Incubus stories because again, Mike, I actually got a chance to like literally work with this guy.
Yes,
I want to dive into what that was like to actually share a frame with the man.
please do.
Um, so the cool thing about working with Robert was um, again, we've talked about this on the show before. You never know what you're going to get when your star comes in. A lot of times it's like they say, you could be a little disappointed by meeting your heroes sometimes, and you won't get the same kind of grace, affection, feedback, whatever you want to call it, from them when you're in a scene with them. Uh, in this case, I was pleasantly surprised to see that Robert was a very giving actor. He actually wanted everyone in the scene to feel comfortable and to feel kind of in the zone to do their very best. So one scene that I'll bring up was there's a scene where I'm playing a young cop and I'm detaining Robert, and I have to get a little physical with him. And I remember two things that were kind of awkward about this scene. Number one, I remember having to kind of like get physical with him and
Yeah.
like jack him up and press him up against a wall. And then I had to throw cuffs on him. Like, I had to do this cop move that I had been practicing with. You ever see in the movies when the cops slap cuffs on a wrist with just one hand?
Yes.
And how that works is you basically already open the cuff, and then you literally have to, like, hit the person's wrist.
Hmm.
And it hurts a little bit, There's no way to fake that. It's not like we have fake handcuffs. These are real handcuffs we're doing it with. And I remember number 1 kinda being like, "So, Robert, I'm gonna slap these cuffs on you. Are you okay with that? Like, I don't wanna kinda hurt you in a way." Like, I probably said something like that, and he looked at me and he kinda made this face, almost like, "You're not gonna hurt me, don't worry." And he's like, "Just do it, just make sure you do it." He basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but, like, I'd rather it sting a little bit and not make it look like bullshit, like, he didn't say that, but that's kinda like, uh, was kinda the gist of what he said, like, I'd rather have a sting for 15 minutes in my wrist than to kind of have you worrying about that while you do this scene. So I thought that that was really kinda like a pretty cool thing because sometimes actors get a bad name as being somewhat dandelions, being a little bit like a flower, being a little bit like maybe a little fragile, but
Sure.
Robert was kinda like, bring that shit." And the other kinda cool thing was, I had to be afraid of him, and I had to make it look like I wanted to kill him. I had to go
Ouch.
from being afraid to being, like, enraged, like I'm gonna lose my mind and do some police brutality shit and kill him. And to get me enraged, he said something, like, really fucked up, and I'm not gonna repeat it on the show because it's so dark, but basically he looked at me, and he kinda got into the character, and he locks eyes with me, and it's like staring into the eyes of a serpent, at this point, and he looks at me, and he says, "You know why I'm really locked up?" Because he's in character, because he's like he's a prisoner, and he grabs my ear and, like, whispers just the most dark, fucked up thing about why he's really in jail,
Sure.
and I went from being, like, angry at what he said, but at the same time kinda being like, "You are such a twisted individual in all the best possible ways," because that was one of the creepiest fucking things I've ever had a human being say to me.
Sure.
And it got me like and then action, and then, literally like that he whispered that like as the cameras are, "All right, scene 35, take 3, and marker, like that's going on, and he's like whispering this dark shit to me. And then action, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa," and then I kind of attack him. So it's pretty cool to see that he did like those old school movie actor tricks where it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get in this guy's head a little bit right before the scene, and it's gonna be cool. We're gonna get something out of this." Really cool old school actor tricks to see displayed on set.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I mean, I'm happy that that happened, and you were obviously professional and understood it. And I hate to always reference the 2023 world, but luckily nobody was there to hashtag this, that, or the other because it was for the betterment of the film. And I just wish people would understand that, like sometimes on a movie set, these type of tricks are good because they get you into character. And yeah, there's crossing a line, but obviously he did not cross any line. You were able to handle it. It was for the betterment of the scene, and I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think Robert kinda could, read the room and feel as though, he'd kind of, earn the right to help enhance my acting a little bit. And here's the thing, man, the reality is I look back at that moment now, the truth is I was, what, 22? Maybe I had just turned 23, but, like, literally a kid. And the truth is, I probably wasn't really bringing it in the face, Maybe there was something that Robert saw that like, "Ooh, maybe this kid's being a little timid. Maybe I should try and help him out a little bit." So I think he was doing me a favor. But moving on, we shot the movie. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I'd love to maybe dust that off this Halloween season. If you haven't seen the movie Incubus, check it out. It's a great kind of throwback style love letter to 80s horror. It also stars William Forsythe, Johnny Sullivan. I'm sorry, Fred Sullivan is in the movie. Jonathan Silverman, Joey Fatone's in that movie, which is really cool. That's a whole nother story for another day. But we love seeing Joey Fatone really like getting out there on the. We've seen him all over the place now with In Sync back together again. It's always nice. Who doesn't love a reunion, man? There's nothing like a good reunion. So I'm happy to see Joey and his friends from when they were, in their teenage years and early 20s getting back together. That's pretty cool all these years later.
Sure.
But yeah, great cast, man. Glenn Ciano made a great movie there. And let's now pick up where you left off in the beginning there with Rock and Shock was a year later. We're premiering the movie. And yeah, man, again, you can probably attest to this, Mike. We all hear about long lines at conventions to sign and get autographs and things like that. When Robert's at a horror con, you're talking a line wrapped around the building to get his autograph. Like it's that kind of telling you, it's like Elvis of horror.
And it's also interesting, Tommy. One little story within a story is when you see people come out with like Nightmare on Elm Street or Freddy Krueger tattoos, and they want the actual Robert Englund to sign with a marker their arm or their thigh or whatever their back with a magic marker. And I wonder, is he supposed to sign Robert Englund? Is he supposed to sign Freddy Krueger? And then they go out and get the marker tattooed to add the signature to the tattoo work. And I mean, that's just an interesting side story to all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, I think if people are getting your name tattooed on their bodies, that goes to show you the level of impact you've had on the lives of many. I don't know about you. Nobody's ever asked me to sign their body for a potential autograph. So I think most people will never experience what that's like. And we make jokes about it. Like we laugh about it. We're, haha. But like it's got to be kind of weird, to have that level of fame. Like, oh, I'm going to write my name on someone's fucking leg.
Yeah.
And they're going to go put permanent ink and inject it with thousands of little needles to fill that signature up. And it will remain on their body for life or until they decide to have lasers burn it off their body.
Or covered up. I knew a lady that was such a Weird Al Yankovic fan that she did that. She went to a Weird Al concert, somehow got backstage, had Weird Al sign his name on her arm, and then got it tattooed. Well, the way that Weird Al Yankovic, the musician, the parody musician, apparently signs his name, Tommy, is two big letters, block letters, A L, like really big, like industrial arts, gothic writing. And this lady went out and got that tattooed on her arm. So she's walking around a full grown mother. She's got a child, and she's got a giant
Mm.
clumpy A and a giant clumpy L on her arm. I don't think
Hey,
she had any intention of getting that wiped off, but that's fandom, buddy. I mean, that's fanhood, I guess.
she's probably going to want to think that one through later on at a later date. That one might not age, that tattoo might not age well, but maybe not. Hey, it's her body. If she wants, she can paint anything she wants on it as long as she's not offending anyone else. But good lord, that's commitment. But yeah, Rock and Shock was a great event, Mike. Just having the Freddy rub, so to speak.
Yes.
Just being able to be around Robert that night was really special. And here's the cool thing about Robert, and you're gonna laugh, but we're talking a year, and in actuality, it was probably like a year and a few months later. We're premiering this movie at Rock and Shock, and I'm about to walk up to Robert, and I'll be completely honest, and I don't mean this to sound like a dick or anything like that, but like I didn't think he'd remember me.
Sure.
Like I didn't think we worked together for a couple weeks a year and a half ago. I had 5 lines in the movie, okay? I wasn't exactly like, you know, battling him in monologues back and forth, it was like a couple scenes we shot. And sure enough, I look at him, he locks eyes with me, shakes my hand, he goes, "Hey, Tommy, how you been?" And, man, like, I get chills, not chills, that's probably a little extreme, but it warms my little belly just thinking of that, like, "Oh, wow, man, this guy, like, a year and a half later is, like, remembers my name, and we pick up like we left off." And I've been doing this for a while now, and that's really the sign of a true professional, as simple as it sounds. But, like, if a year or 2 later, you haven't seen the person, you haven't talked to them, if they can lock eyes with you, shake your hand, and remember your name, that's a pro right there, you know? That's a real that's a different type of person, is what I'm saying.
Well, Tommy, a friend of mine who's not in the film world, but I'll give him a shout out, Dr. Jason Matheson, who you and I have discussed off the air. He's said to me several times in our friendship that the definition of class is making other people feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, then Robert is as classy as they come. Um, yeah, so the movie came out, and again, I think it's one of those films that true horror fans and true Robert fans would just absolutely love. And yeah, what a gentleman! Like Laza just said, as he also said, it's true. He is Irish, but he is certainly not going to play the leprechaun. Robert sounds like a true gentleman with class. Really is, man. I mean, I'll tell you, I've been doing this now for more years than I'd care to mention, but I don't know that I've bumped into a classier actor than Robert. He's right up there with probably the top 3 to 5 people that I got a chance to work with, and it's kind of funny, like a rookie getting a chance to win the World Series in their debut season. It's funny how, like, I got a chance to work with the classiest guy I ever worked with in my first movie, and then it was all kinda hard shoes to fill in the class department when you got Robert on set, but also, I gotta say this too, just the fame is insane. Like, the cool thing about Robert is you wouldn't think that he gets recognized as much because he's not in the Freddy makeup, but he gets
Right.
recognized everywhere. It was cool to kinda just see him, like you said, Mike, interacting with the fans and doing his thing, and I got paid a really cool compliment by Robert. I remember we were at, like, the wrap party for Incubus, and while everyone's kinda hanging around Robert, hanging around, waiting for him to just kinda hanging on every word, and he comes up to me, and this was huge, man. Again, like, an actor that's been doing it for 30, 40 years doesn't have to do this to the twenty-something-year-old rookie, and he just said, he goes, "Tommy," he goes, "you did a really great job." He goes, "You did. It was small, it was understated, and you know what you have going for you?" And I said, "What?" Like, I'm like, "What the fuck is this g what is he gonna say?" He looks at me, and goes, "Your eyes are very far apart." And I was like, "Huh, really?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, and he could tell I didn't know what that meant. And he goes, "That
Sure.
means that the camera can see both of your eyes from most angles that you look, which is very engaging and truly a classic." He basically said, like, that's a classic element that directors look for in an actor, like eyes that are wide apart that can really tell a story. And I'm like, no shit, you got me feeling like a hammerhead shark over here. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that, buddy. But again,
Oh boy.
just to take a minute to, like, give a very specific and random compliment about somebody. I thought that that was really cool, and, I walked out of that conversation feeling 10 feet tall. I thought I was gonna be the next Johnny Depp after that combo. Didn't
Who
happen.
was who was the gentleman, Tom Sizemore, that had great compliments for your hair at the time? So between the late great Tom Sizemore complimenting your hair and Robert Englund complimenting your eye space, these guys are all over you, buddy.
Bud, you know what it is? I've always, respected the veterans on set, and that's
Sure.
always paid me I shouldn't say paid me, but that's always done me well, like having a lot of respect for whoever the number one on the call sheet is,
Yeah.
treating them like the captain of the team, never trying to big time anybody, never trying to be too cool to come up to them and let them know what a fan I am and how much I appreciate the work that they did decades before I was even in the game. I think if anything, if I've gotten some compliments here or there along the way, it's because I don't want to say that I've kissed these guys' asses, but I've treated them with a lot of respect. And I think that, lesson to the and action listeners, if you've listened along this far, if you treat people with respect, they'll eventually treat you with respect back. I should say most of them. Some people are just fucking assholes, but for the most part, in this acting world, if you treat the veterans with respect, they're going to pay it back.
It reminds me of the young rookie wrestler who goes around and cordially introduces him or herself and shakes everyone's hand in the dressing room. And the old school way of doing things. And a lot of times, I think that's the way to go.
You're so right, Mike. I mean, think about it. We all have egos, especially performers. That's
Right.
probably why you got into performing in the first place. You were kind of good at something or you had a unique ability that others don't have. So, the ego is always going to be there. And if you just show up and you're the new kid on the scene and you're shut in and you don't feel the need to say hi to everybody and you kind of keep to yourself, well, that can come off as like you being kind of like almost not aware of your settings. It's almost like you hate to say this, but it's almost like, "Hey, kid, you should be so lucky to be sharing a dressing room with us," or "You should be so lucky to be on this production. You should be coming up to us and saying, 'Hi, my name is so and so. Is there anything I can do for you?'" We shouldn't come up to you and say, "Hey, welcome to the show." It's the other way
Right.
around. So that's another lesson that, people watching this show, I know there's a lot of actors that watch this. Don't make it look like a meet and greet, like you're at a convention. But if you're working on a movie with a big star and you have a speaking line, this doesn't really go for background actors. This is for principal actors only. But if you're a principal actor in a scene with a big star and you have a line, as long as they're not eating, as long as they're not on the phone, use all those natural human instincts. But if you see them just sitting there, go up to them and say hello, shake hands with them, make eye contact. Eye contact is big. Don't be afraid to lock eyes with another human and just say, "Hey, I'm so and so. It's really nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to doing the scene. If there's anything I can do to help it along, let me know. I'm here." And you know
Yeah.
what'll happen? Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, you want to read it right now?" A lot of times they're going to appreciate that.
That reminds me of when I got into Screen Actors Guild, Tommy, as a principal, playing the role of the character that Sybil Shepherd was playing in Hard Luck. I played her son, and the reality was she was instrumental in casting me. Of Mario Van Peebles deferred to Sybil Shepherd to choose who to play her son. She chose me. So I believe the way that I remember the story is I got her a thank you card, and I went and I was able to introduce myself, and then I kind of cooled it after that. Once I made that initial thank you, I didn't push the point and try to be her best friend or anything like that. But it can, when we have this conversation about Robert and these other big time performers, it makes me think maybe we should do a topic for a future show, Tommy, of onset decorum. And I think you're right in that
That's a great
some,
idea.
yeah, some situations like when you're an extra, you don't necessarily want to be the introduce yourself type. You kind of want to lay low and be respectful of that spot.
Blend in. You want to blend in.
Right. And then when you are actually in a principal role or a day player or whatever you want to call it, the things are a little bit different. And I think that those nuances, hey, look, nobody has the guidelines in gold or in blood or anything, but we can offer some suggestions or some thoughts, at least some experiences, because we've both been in interesting situations. And sometimes you don't see those situations coming, Tommy. I mean, I went to do extra work for a film and ended up in a scene with Meryl Streep, but I didn't see that coming. And you kind of have to play these things as they come up sometimes. And sometimes they can be scary and overwhelming and very challenging, especially if you've never been in a situation. So I think an onset decorum, we can throw that in the mix for a future show.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Mike. I think a lot of people could get some mileage out of that because, it is kind of like, what do I do? What do I do? There's a big movie star 10 feet in front of me. I've only seen them on a massive screen and now they're right in front of me. What do I do? Um, Yeah,
I
guys, to
think
wrap things up, as you can see, the sun is at its moment when the show usually wraps up. That's why we like broadcasting live here from the porch because we almost have like a sundial that tells us that that's the go home signal. So we're going to wrap things up over the next 5 or 10 minutes. But as I wrap things up, I just wanted to mention a few more things about Robert Englund, aka Freddy Krueger. I believe Robert just wrote a really great book that you can check out. Um, we're gonna get a title on that, and I recommend it. I've read certain passages, um, and again, if you're a book person and you want to hear some really great stories, there's a book called Hollywood Monster: A Walk Down Elm Street with the Man of Your Dreams. So fun title, and that book kind of sums up everything about Robert that you'd ever want to know in his rise to fame in the horror genre. As I battle the sun here, good thing I got the Freddy Krueger hat to help me stay
I
in the
think
shade.
the sun has become our stage manager, always like giving us the big
Yeah, be
middle.
like, all right, so it's been an hour, guys. It's been an
I
hour.
just I just found Hollywood Monster, Walk Down Elm Street, The Man of Your Dreams, introductions by Wes Craven and Toby Hooper,
That's it.
uh, with Alan Gulster. So I'm looking at it. I really wish they would add an audio version to this because I'd love to hear Robert Englund tell his own story. But until that time, the hardcover's available, the paperback's available, the Kindle's available.
Check it on out. Check it on out. Just type that shit in there. So guys, I have to say this, and Mike, I haven't even talked to you about this yet.
Oh boy!
So this is news to you, pal.
Oh gee
But
whiz!
I have a positive announcement, which will it's good news and bad news. The good news is I'm about to start up on another movie. Mike, you know that much. I can't really say when we're turning the cameras on, but it's going to be very soon. This is a very kind of a cloak and dagger situation. However, these next couple weeks are going to be really hard for me, so we're going to have to put and action on the shelf for just 3 weeks. We're going to be gone next week, the week after that, and the week after that really just as I prepare for this movie and shoot this film, I'm going to be away. I'm going to be on the battlefield. However, y'all know that that means I'm going to have plenty of new, fun, exciting stories to talk about upon my return. So this is really dramatic here. I'm in this kind of enlightened, enlightened spirit here. So I will miss everybody, Mike. I'm gonna miss you too, but you and I will be chatting on the old phone like it's 1997.
Sure.
Mike and I have our good old fashioned. Mike is one of my few friends. I've got a few friends like this, but Mike is one of my favorites to just have a good old fashioned phone conversation with. We do that at least a couple times a week, and call your friends, guys. I got news for you. Life is short. Tomorrow's never promised. And yeah, texts are cute and we can send funny gifs and pictures, but there's nothing like picking up the phone and reaching out to a pal and saying what's up. So while I'm gone for these 3 weeks and while Mike is off painting pictures and tending to his other various YouTube channels, pick up the phone and call a friend.
Well, Tommy, one of those YouTube channels, Avalonia Festival, will have its eighth live event on Saturday, November 4th in Jacksonville, Florida. As anyone's down here,
Wow.
but buddy, you were one of
Congratulations.
yeah. I mean, you probably you may or may not remember, but I think you were one of the first people I chatted with this topic when I was launching the very first Avalonia Festival back in 2017 and putting the pieces together. And here we are.
Sure.
And this thing is there was 3 live events in Rhode Island. This will be the 5th one in Florida. I've jumped around to different locations in Florida. This one will be at an actual traditional movie theater, Atlantic Theaters, which is kind of a classic movie theater venue. It's been taken over by the Beaches Vineyard Church, and it's got like screening rooms and a cafe and all this good stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. Yesterday, buddy, my eyes were about to fall out of their sockets because I spent about 12 hours choosing the final award winners for the festival.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
my my judge Kazuya from Japan. He went through all the films first, and then I go through and make the final choices for the award winners. And Tommy, that's a tough one, man, because art is so subjective and film is so subjective. And when you're giving out awards for films, you realize, like, look, this is not a life or death thing, but people take this stuff seriously and they pay the entry
Sure.
fee. So they pay the entry fee to have their film looked at and judged fairly. And trying to decide like which film should get an award and which one not, it's tough. But eventually, made those decisions, and I'm very happy with it. So looking
Great.
forward to November 4th. Thanks,
We
buddy.
love that. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to all of the contestants at the Avalonia Film Festival. I'm sure whether you win or lose, you're going to get something out of the experience. And Mike, yeah, congratulations, man. Crazy to think that it's been 6 years since you started that up and to see how far it's gone and jumping states and everything else. So, guys, we really appreciate it. If you haven't already, I have two requests in my absence. If you could go down and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would much appreciate it. Also, hit that notifications bell so you can see my random various cat videos, action figure videos. Freddy, you might just see him pop out in your dreams. I'm
Ah.
gonna miss. Yeah, watch out, Mikey. Watch out. I'm gonna miss you guys. I really will. I mean that. I'm not trying to get corny at the end of the show, but I really do look forward to this hour every Tuesday to come on, hang out with my best buddy Mike, and just kind of reminisce and tell stories from many movie moons ago. All right, guys, thank you so much for always listening. Laza, I really appreciate you. You support everything, and that means the world to us. Kim, we miss you. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. I'm gonna go put some sunglasses on.
Bye. Yeah, sunglasses during the day.